G'day mate, 40 here. So I really like Tucker Carlson, the person, from what I know about him. I am ambivalent about his show. So some good stuff on his show, some bad stuff. Overall, I don't know whether it's more of a force for good or for bad in the world. So I disagree with the left in that I don't think it's primarily a force for bad in the world. I disagree with Tucker Carlson's show's fans that I don't believe that it's primarily clearly a force for good in the world. I'm quite ambivalent. So did a little more reading. LA Times story. It says that Rupert Murdoch made this decision, and he did it based on the Abby Grossberg lawsuit against Tucker. Abby Grossberg was Tucker's primary booker, and she complained that Tucker fostered an anti-Semitic and bullying workplace. So it'd be interesting if that is accurate, that it was Abby Grossberg and her lawsuit against Tucker that was the primary reason for finally firing him. Other thought that occurs to me is that I don't think Rupert Murdoch likes being overshadowed by his stars. So I think the Murdochs were glad to get rid of Roger Ailes, so the man who built Fox News, and they were glad to get rid of Glenn Beck, the other Fox News star who threatened to become bigger than Fox News. I think they were glad to get rid of, who's that tall Irish guy? Bill O'Reilly, right? Another bloke who threatened to become bigger than Fox News. And I think they're glad to get rid of Tucker Carlson. So I think the Murdochs are glad to get rid of everyone who threatened to become bigger than Rupert Murdoch. They're bigger than the institution itself. So I think they're glad to get rid of Bill O'Reilly, Glenn Beck, Roger Ailes, Tucker Carlson, and anyone else in the future who threatens to become bigger than Fox News. So maybe part of this is just ego on the part of Rupert Murdoch, right? Just not wanting any individual star to overshadow the brand. And then the other thought I have is that Tucker is probably much more of a web personality than a cable TV personality. Like, he was the closest thing that the distant right had to a talking head on cable TV. He's probably much better suited for the web than for the comparatively staid world of cable TV. So perhaps the internet could unleash him, and he could produce edgier shows. So Tucker's a lot like Dennis Prager in that he radiates personal happiness. But if you just track the things he says, he's consistently saying, we're doomed. This is bizarre. We're living in some totalitarian regime. Like, this is awful. This is a dystopian nightmare, right? That's the kind of rhetoric that he's filled his show with, while at the same time he does radiate happiness. So kind of a bizarre combination that Dennis Prager also pulls off. Like, Dennis Prager's got his happiness book, his dedicated happiness hour, his hundreds of happiness lectures, and yet the sum total of his show consistently would make people less happy than they were prior to the show. And so watching Tucker Carlson, I would expect, would consistently make people more angry and less happy than they were prior to the show, even though Tucker and Dennis both radiate happiness. So I guess for the individual who's pumping out poison, and to the extent that Tucker Carlson and Dennis Prager, along with most other famous right-wing pundits, are pumping out the message that we're living in a dystopian nightmare, that things have never been so bad, that we're living through a civil war, that we're becoming more and more like Nazi Germany and Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin every day, right? So to the extent that Tucker and Dennis get attention, right? Get importance, get fame, get feeling of power and status by attracting a large audience and developing a rabid following, right? The best way to engage is to enrage, get people enraged. So Dennis and Tucker got people enraged, and that was good for Dennis and Tucker, like good for their careers, good for their income, good for their status, good for their feeling of importance, right? We all want to feel like very important people, but bad for the people who take in this content and to the extent that they allow it to affect them. So Tucker Carlson consistently portrays America as in much worse shape than it is. He consistently portrays our elites as much more devious than they are. In my understanding, our elites are just like us, flawed human beings. So the dystopian nightmare that Tucker and Dennis and all the other major right-wing pundits push, all right, that you're a victim, that the elites are out to get you. Right? I think that's bad for people. It makes them less happy and less effective. And so to that extent, the show was debilitating. All right, one of the prime ways to get healthier is to develop an appropriate level of safety, which is just another way of saying a reduced level of unnecessary anxiety. Right? So anxiety is when you're in fight or flight inappropriately. Right? When you're in fight or flight, when you're in a fight and flight real life situation, that's not anxiety. That's an appropriate level of arousal to deal with the situation. Anxiety is inappropriate levels of arousal to deal with your daily life, and right-wing pundits such as Dennis Prager and Tucker Carlson and the other ones on nationally syndicated radio and Fox News, right, to the extent that they promote anxiety, that we're in a dystopian nightmare, all right, they're making people less happy, less effective, and they're pumping poison into the American soul. At the same time, while they're doing this, they get to feel very important and make money and feel like they have power and influence and that they're brave truth tellers and that they're the ones who are staring into the abyss and letting people know what the real score is. So they get happy and get to feel important, but at the cost of the rubes who take them seriously.